They've buried the most powerful force within you and called it a fairy tale. From day one, you've been trained to look outward, for answers, for meaning, for direction. You've been taught to chase validation in a world full of noise, to follow systems that were never meant to set you free. But deep inside, older than memory, there's something real. A force so ancient it's been whispered about for millennia. It's curled at the base of your spine like a sleeping serpent, quiet, still, and waiting. They've told you it's just a metaphor, a myth. New Age nonsense, or worse, something dangerous. But despite the ridicule, despite the denial, this energy keeps showing up, again and again. Across every era, in every corner of the world, through yogis, mystics, seers, and even kings. They all spoke of it. They all honored it. Because they knew, awakening it could change everything. This isn't some meditation gimmick or chakra poster on a yoga studio wall. This is about truth. Undeniable, electric, visceral truth. And once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. Your life doesn't just shift, it flips. For centuries, we've been conditioned to seek power outside of ourselves. Through religion, through institutions, through leaders, through systems that thrive on dependence. But what if the greatest power you'll ever know isn't out there? What if it's been inside you this whole time, just waiting for you to remember? Kundalini isn't just some ancient idea tossed around in spiritual circles. It's an energy technology. A living, breathing intelligence coded directly into your biology. Revered for thousands of years. Hidden by empires. Forgotten by modern minds. Not because it lacks truth, but because it holds too much of it. If the world fully understood Kundalini, if even a fraction of us activated it, the structures built on fear and confusion would collapse overnight. That's why it's been silenced, ridiculed, dismissed. But Kundalini isn't about belief. It's not about theory. It's about experience. It's the primal life force, coiled like a serpent at the base of your spine, waiting to rise through your energetic system. And when it does, it ignites a total transformation. How you feel, how you think, how you see the world. Ancient yogis mapped this long before modern science had names for the nervous system or neuroplasticity. They described chakras not as symbolic flowers or pretty colors, but as energy gateways. Each one tied to a stage of your development, psychological, emotional, spiritual. Not guesses, not wishful thinking, direct experience. And then it all got buried. Colonial powers, religious authorities, institutional fear, all of them chipped away at this knowledge. They stripped the sacred from the scientific, labeled inner exploration as superstition. The serpent, once a symbol of transformation and enlightenment, became a villain in Western theology. Something to fear, to reject, to erase. The very image that once pointed initiates toward awakening was weaponized to keep the masses spiritually numb. Because what better way to keep people under control than to convince them that their own awakening is evil? But here's the thing, that energy, it never left. It's still there. Right now, inside you. Not just inside monks or mystics or spiritual elites. You, built into your breath, your spine, your nervous system. The only question is, will you ever meet it? Because Kundalini isn't a trend. It's a revolution. Not a movement of followers, but of seekers, people who are done wearing masks and ready to peel back the layers. People ready to stop performing and start living from the core of their being. And that's why it's not taught in schools. That's why it's not front-page news or best-selling mainstream science. Because this energy doesn't sell obedience, it shatters it. Once Kundalini starts to rise in you, The fear-based control mechanisms stop working. Shame doesn't hook you. Superficiality doesn't seduce you. You see with new eyes. You feel with new depth. You start living from a truth so raw and unfiltered, it rewrites your reality. But make no mistake, this energy is not passive. It doesn't play nice. It amplifies everything. If you're grounded, open, and humble, it can transform you. But if you're unstable, ego-driven, or unprepared, it can throw your whole world into chaos. Not to punish, but to expose. That's why traditions wrapped it in ritual. That's why there were disciplines, inner purification, not to exclude people, to prepare them. Because when the serpent rises, it doesn't just bring light, it brings everything. All the stuff you've shoved down, denied, hidden. And that's where the real journey begins. So ask yourself, are you truly ready to awaken? Not just to the light and love, but to the full truth of who you are. To the parts you've been avoiding, the ones you've labeled too dark, too much, too painful. Because that's what Kundalini does. It's not your escape, it's your entry point into your deepest self. And once it begins, there's no going back to sleep. Kundalini isn't a buzzword. It's not a hashtag or a logo for a workshop. It's not a metaphor someone made up to sell you crystals or weekend retreats. It is real, it is alive, and it is already inside you. But what Kundalini is, and what it's not, has been twisted, diluted, and misrepresented for centuries. You've probably heard fragments, pieces wrapped in spiritual jargon, or buried under layers of branding. But most of it, it's surface level at best, and in many cases, it's flat out wrong. Because the real truth about Kundalini doesn't fit neatly into a yoga class or a guided meditation app. It doesn't play nice with commercial spirituality or textbook psychology. Because Kundalini is the raw, undiluted current of consciousness itself. It's ancient. It's biological. It's mystical. It's scientific. It's you in your purest, most activated state. At its root, Kundalini is your life force, not your thoughts, 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 not your thoughtsnality. It's the energy that powers all of that. It lives at the base of your spine, resting at what the yogic tradition calls the Muladhara chakra. But don't mistake that for poetic symbolism. This isn't just ancient poetry. It's anatomical spiritual code. This force is embedded into your body's systems, into your nerves, your glands, your very breath. And when it awakens, it moves, not randomly, not chaotically. It flows through the subtle architecture of your body, the energetic network mapped by sages thousands of years ago. As it rises, it activates every part of you that's been asleep. Your intuition sharpens, your emotions deepen, your memory expands, your senses become heightened, even your biology begins to shift. But here's where it gets tricky, not because Kundalini is dangerous, but because of what we've been taught about it. In the modern West, Kundalini has been commercialized, branded, stripped of its depth and packaged as a product. You'll see it splashed across magazine covers, promised in a 3-day retreat, or taught in feel-good workshops that claim you'll be activated in a single session. But that's not awakening, that's performance. Real Kundalini awakening, it's not a peak moment, it's not an emotional high, it's a process. And it's messy, it's gritty, it breaks things apart, on purpose. It dismantles the parts of you that were never real to begin with. It doesn't exist to entertain you. It's not here to make you feel special. It's here to transform you. And real transformation is never glamorous. It's not clean. It's not Instagrammable. It doesn't fit into a filter. Because real awakening, it means being torn open. It means the collapse of everything false, every belief you inherited, every identity you clung to, every fear you buried, every narrative you used to explain away your pain. Kundalini rips through all of it. It doesn't ask you who you want to be. It shows you who you've always been, beneath the programming, the pretending, the survival masks. You may feel moments of bliss. You may have flashes of cosmic insight. But those aren't the goal. They're just glimpses. The real goal is truth. And truth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like breaking. Kundalini will expose everything. Your grief, your rage, your deepest longing, your most hidden shame, not to punish you, but to liberate you. That's why it was always protected in sacred traditions. That's why initiates prepared for years before even attempting to activate it. Because this energy, it's not casual. And no, you don't need to be a monk. You don't need to renounce the world. You just need one thing: honesty. Brutal, unflinching honesty. Not just with others, but with yourself. Because Kundalini doesn't respond to how spiritual you look. It responds to how aligned you actually are. You could wear white robes and chant mantras for hours, but if your heart is blocked and your mind is noisy, the energy won't move. Or worse, it will, and you won't be ready for what it brings up. It rises when you're still, when you're steady, when your inner world finally becomes quiet enough to hear it, when the distractions fall away and the signal of your truth cuts through the static. And let's be clear, Kundalini isn't a shortcut. It's not a bypass. It's not a hack to wisdom. If anything, it's the opposite. It's the fast track to everything you've been avoiding. All the pain, all the fears, all the unresolved emotions, it pulls them up, not to overwhelm you, to free you. And that's why people who awaken prematurely, without preparation, without support, without grounding, often spiral into confusion, chaos, even physical distress. Not because the energy is wrong, but because it magnifies what hasn't been healed yet. It turns the lights on. And if you've been hiding in the dark for a long time, that light can feel brutal. But that intensity, it's sacred, it's not destruction. It's clearing. It's the fire that makes room for what's true. Because when Kundalini moves, it doesn't just tweak how you feel inside. It rewires how you live. It changes how you relate to your body, to your emotions, to your thoughts, to your choices. It burns through illusion. And what remains isn't some enlightened, floating version of yourself. What remains is you. The real you. The one who has been waiting beneath the layers. Alive. Embodied. Awake. There's this myth floating around, that awakening Kundalini is like flipping a switch. 1 second, you're ordinary. The next, you're bathed in golden light, blissed out, vibrating in cosmic harmony. Sounds nice, right? But the truth is far messier, far more real. When this energy stirs, it doesn't knock politely. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't care what's on your calendar. It moves how it wants, when it wants, and when it does, your body becomes both temple and battlefield at once. Some people feel a heat rising through their spine, like fire in their bones. Others start shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer voltage of something they can't contain. You might feel pressure in your head, tingling in your limbs, a sudden burst of joy or grief. Crying, laughing, collapsing, all in the same breath. This isn't madness. These aren't random symptoms. They're signs that something real is waking up. Kundalini doesn't rise through logic. It rises through surrender. And that's what makes the process so challenging, because surrender is terrifying to the ego. Your ego loves control. It thrives on certainty. It clings to your story, your image, your identity. But Kundalini, It doesn't care about your story. It doesn't care about the role you've played to fit in, survive, or impress. It only wants what's real, so it pushes your shadows to the surface. Everything you've buried, the childhood wounds, the shame you never faced, the beliefs you inherited but never questioned, it all comes up. This is the part most people don't see coming. They come chasing spiritual fireworks, and instead they get emotional storms. But this is the initiation. Awakening isn't always beautiful. In fact, most of it is raw, confusing, even painful. You might lose interest in things that once obsessed you. You might feel distant from old friends, disconnected from what used to define you. Not because you're broken, but because you're changing. Kundalini doesn't just awaken your energy, it rewrites your life. Relationships may fall apart, not because of drama, but because they were built on an outdated version of you. You might feel lost, unmotivated, even isolated. But that isn't failure. That's transformation. You're not going crazy. You're shedding. Shedding the false identities, the coping mechanisms, the programmed patterns that helped you survive a disconnected world. And in the middle of that shedding, even in the chaos, something new starts to emerge. Moments of stillness, moments of clarity, moments of knowing. There's a peace that doesn't make sense. A sense of connection that isn't coming from anything external. You might feel plugged into something bigger, like a whisper from your soul reminding you, you're on the path. Keep going. These are the glimpses that keep you moving. They're not rewards. They're reminders. Proof that something sacred is happening, even when it feels like everything's falling apart. But here's the problem. Modern spirituality rarely prepares us for this. It sells awakening as a product, a lifestyle, a look, something you achieve, post about, and monetize. But Kundalini doesn't care how spiritual you appear. It doesn't care if you have crystals or mantras or a perfectly curated meditation space. What it cares about is this: are you willing to be real? Are you willing to face the parts of yourself you've disowned? Are you ready to feel what you've numbed for years? Are you prepared to let go of everything that kept you safe but small? Because that's what this energy asks of you. Total honesty, total presence. And that's why ancient traditions didn't open this door easily. They required discipline, grounding, devotion, not to gatekeep, but to protect. Because once the energy rises, there's no turning back. You either evolve with it, or you resist and get crushed by the weight of what you're not ready to face. Preparation is everything. Your body has to be strong enough to handle the intensity. Your mind has to be stable enough to witness without reacting. And your spirit, your soul, has to be willing to let go of everything it thought it knew. And here's the thing. Awakenings don't follow a script. Some come slowly, a quiet fire that builds over years. Others hit like lightning, sudden, shocking, undeniable. There's no formula, no checklist. But deep down, your soul knows. It knows when you're ready. Your role isn't to control the awakening. Your job is to prepare for it, to become available, to clean the lens, clear the noise, steady the breath. Because when that energy comes knocking, you don't want to meet it with fear. You want to meet it with reverence. This is what it's really about, returning to reverence. Not for tradition, not for dogma, but for life itself, for the divine spark that pulses inside you, waiting to be remembered. It doesn't need you to chase it, it needs you to be ready for it. And readiness doesn't mean perfection. It means truth. It means presence. It means courage. Because Kundalini doesn't just awaken you to some otherworldly realm, it awakens you to this realm, to the sacredness of your body, of your breath, of your emotions, of your pain. It awakens you to everything. And that's why it changes everything. Long before the word Kundalini ever appeared in English, ancient civilizations were already working with this force. They didn't call it energy in the way we do today, but they knew it, felt it, lived by it. They built entire spiritual frameworks around it. Because they understood something we've forgotten. The key to transcending the human condition was never somewhere out there. It was inside. In the yogic traditions of ancient India, Kundalini was known as Shakti, the divine feminine energy, sacred, sleeping at the base of the spine, waiting to rise and reunite with Shiva, the divine masculine seated at the crown. And no, this wasn't just poetic imagery. This was sacred science. The entire structure of chakras, nadis, mantras and mudras, none of it was random. It was all created to support this inner process, this resurrection. Yogis didn't pursue this path for status. They weren't trying to impress. They were training, for years, decades even, in silence, devotion, discipline, to prepare their bodies and minds to hold this energy. Not to escape reality, but to fully embody the divine within reality. And India wasn't the only one. The same symbols appear across the world, across cultures, continents, and thousands of years, too many times to be coincidence. In ancient Egypt, you'll see the uraeus, a cobra rising from the foreheads of the pharaohs. It wasn't just decoration. It symbolized awakened consciousness. The serpent energy risen through the spine, activating the third eye. The Eye of Horus wasn't just about protection. It was a map of inner sight. In Greek mythology, the staff of Hermes, the caduceus, two serpents coiled around a central rod, topped with wings. Sound familiar? It's nearly identical to the Ida and Pingala nadis, winding around the central Sushumna channel in yogic anatomy. Even in early Gnostic Christianity, before the doctrine was rewritten by councils and emperors, there were whispers of the sacred feminine, Sophia, the divine wisdom within, not separate from God, part of God, inside us. This wasn't just myth, this was encoded memory. Because this knowledge wasn't divided by borders or languages, it was passed on through symbols, hidden in myths, painted into art, woven into rituals. It was whispered through mystery schools, preserved by healers and seekers across time. And then, something shifted. As power centralized, truth was fragmented. Those who understood the sacred either guarded it in silence or saw it stolen and distorted. The serpent, once a guide to higher realms, was turned into a villain. The feminine was demonized. The body became shameful. The sacred became sinful. Why? Because awakened people are harder to control. Colonialism didn't just take land. It took consciousness. It tore through indigenous knowledge systems, labeled them primitive, and replaced them with ideologies built not on truth, but on control. Religion externalized the divine, made God someone out there, someone to fear. Science, in its brilliance, dissected the world, but amputated the soul. Western psychology pathologized spiritual experience. And education taught us how to memorize facts, but never how to know ourselves. What was left was a society disconnected from the most sacred thing we have, our inner fire. But even through all that erasure, the symbols remained, hidden in plain sight. In ancient texts, in temples, in art, in the spiral, the serpent, the tree, the eye, the staff, all metaphors for one thing: the ascent of energy, the awakening of consciousness, the truth that our body is not just flesh, it's a vessel for transformation. And now, slowly, that truth is resurfacing. Not through institutions, but through individuals. People around the world are feeling the stirrings, sometimes without even knowing the word Kundalini. Spontaneous awakenings, surges of energy. lucid dreams, shifts in perception. That's not coincidence. That's memory activating. They're remembering what their ancestors once knew, that we were never meant to stay asleep. That this life, this body, this breath, it's all part of the design. You don't have to become someone else to awaken. You just have to remember who you were before the forgetting. This hidden history of Kundalini isn't just a tale of the past. It's a mirror. It reflects what was stolen from us and what still lives inside us. It shows us that the journey upward isn't a modern invention. It's ancient, it's sacred, and it's encoded into the very structure of the human being. No matter how much it's been mocked, misunderstood, or commercialized, truth has a way of coming back. All it needs is someone ready to receive it. If Kundalini is the serpent, then the chakras are the gates it moves through. And the nadis, those subtle energy channels, are the hidden rivers that carry its fire. This isn't just symbolic. This is energetic anatomy, mapped by ancient sages with precision that modern science is only now beginning to glimpse. See, your body isn't just muscles, bones, and organs. It's a multidimensional field, a complex matrix of consciousness, energy, and biology. And the systems of Kundalini are the blueprint for unlocking that. There are said to be 72,000 nadis, subtle channels through which life force flows. But 3 of them are key: Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Ida flows on the left side of the spine. It's associated with the moon, cooling, feminine, introspective. Pingala flows on the right. It's linked to the sun, warming, masculine, active. And Sushumna, that's the central channel, running straight up the spine. That's the path Kundalini takes when the inner balance is achieved, when duality dissolves and consciousness is ready to rise. But this isn't just about channels. As Kundalini ascends, it pierces through the chakras, the 7 major energy centers aligned along the spine. And these chakras, they're not just colorful wheels for your vision board. They're interfaces between your mind, your body, and your soul. Here's how it unfolds. The root chakra, Muladhara, governs safety, survival, your connection to the earth. The sacral chakra, Svadhisthana, handles emotion, pleasure, creativity. The solar plexus, Manipura, is all about power, identity, will. The heart chakra, Anahata, is where compassion, love, and empathy live. The throat chakra, Vishuddha, governs truth, voice, communication. The third eye, Ajna, opens insight, vision, and intuition. The crown chakra, Sahasrara, is the bridge to the divine, the cosmos, the formless. Sounds beautiful, right? But here's what most people don't realize. Awakening the chakras is not just about meditating with candles or imagining swirling colors. It's not about chanting the right sounds or repeating affirmations until you feel spiritual. Awakening is purification. When Kundalini activates a chakra, it doesn't simply open it. It cleans it. It burns through what's blocking it. And that can feel intense. You might experience overwhelming emotions, strange dreams, physical sensations. Not because something's wrong, but because something old is being forced out. Every chakra corresponds not only to emotional themes or physical organs, but to life stages. The lower chakras, root, sacral, solar, are tied to early development. Childhood. The moments where you learned what was safe, what was love, what was yours. If those stages were distorted through trauma, neglect, or suppression, the energy gets stuck. So when Kundalini gets there, it pushes. It surfaces old pain. It asks you to feel what you've buried, to heal what was left behind. And only when that's done, only when the lower centers can flow again, does the energy move upward. That's why the awakening journey isn't linear. You don't go from chakra to chakra like leveling up in a game. You spiral. One day you're feeling enlightened, full of love. The next day you're crying on the floor, facing childhood wounds you thought were long gone. This is how the process actually works. It's the sacred cycle of purification, not punishment, not regression. Just the necessary fire to make space for light. And it doesn't stop at your spine. When the energy flows freely through your chakras, it doesn't just change how you feel inside. It changes how you show up in the world. It transforms your relationships, your choices, your purpose. Because the goal isn't to float off into the cosmos. The goal is to embody the sacred, here, now, in this human form. The goal is not to escape the body, but to illuminate it. When all the chakras are balanced, awakened and integrated, not as a theory, but in your lived experience, Kundalini reaches the crown. And that moment? It's not the end. It's a beginning. It's the birth of a new way of being. One where you don't just think with your brain. You think with your whole body. You feel with your full self. Intuition becomes sharper than logic. Love becomes more than an emotion. It becomes a state of being. This is what the mystics meant by enlightenment. Not blissful escape, but radical presence. Not being above it all, but being fully in it. You are not broken. You are not a mistake. You are not too much. You are a layered being, carrying energies and imprints across lifetimes. And Kundalini? It knows the way home. Not because someone taught it, but because it's written into you. Your chakras aren't decorations. They are your story, your map, your medicine. And when you stop looking outward for power and start tending to the temple within, that story begins to awaken. For a long time, the conversation around Kundalini stayed behind closed doors, hidden in temples, whispered in ashrams, protected by mystery schools. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, especially the West, dismissed it, called it fantasy, pseudoscience. Too mystical to be real, too ancient to be credible. But slowly, something began to shift. As technology advanced and our ability to measure the subtle caught up, science started brushing against truths that yogis had mapped thousands of years ago. Truths that had been dismissed for centuries were now showing up in lab results, brain scans, and biofeedback readouts. It couldn't be ignored anymore. Because what ancient traditions called prana, chi, or kundalini, modern science now observes as bioelectric charge, electromagnetic fields, and neural activity. The language is different, but the reality, it's converging. Your body isn't just a biological machine, it's a living energy system. Every cell pulses with electricity. Your heart generates a measurable electromagnetic field strong enough to affect people around you. Your brain isn't just a chemical soup. It runs on frequencies, and those frequencies shift depending on your state of consciousness. This isn't fringe. This is measurable. It helps us understand how Kundalini might work, not as fantasy, but as a powerful biological mechanism that the West has simply never had the words for. Let's take brainwaves as an example. Most people live in beta, the fast-thinking, doing, problem-solving state. But when you relax, meditate, or enter flow, your brain starts dipping into alpha and theta, slower waves linked with creativity, insight, and emotional release. In deep meditation or intense spiritual practice, people often drop into delta or even gamma, frequencies linked with unity consciousness, bliss, and heightened perception. What mystics call divine union, science sees as radically altered brain activity. And Kundalini, it seems to be the catalyst. It ramps up energy in the system, rewires emotional pathways, and enhances your sensitivity to subtle shifts. It's like a software upgrade, or maybe more accurately, a hardware one. Studies in fields like neurotheology and transpersonal psychology have started documenting what spiritual seekers have said for millennia. Awakening changes the body. Not just your mood, your actual physical state. Meditation increases gray matter in key parts of the brain. Breathwork changes blood chemistry and CO2 levels. Trauma release techniques reset emotional patterns. Kundalini isn't outside of that. It's woven into it, and one of the most fascinating bridges. The nervous system, especially the vagus nerve. It's the longest cranial nerve in your body, connecting your brain to your heart, lungs, gut, everything that keeps you alive. It regulates your breath, your digestion, your emotional responses. And it's deeply tied to your sense of safety and presence. People who experience Kundalini often report spontaneous breathing changes, shifts in heart rhythm, waves of emotion, and full-body tremors, all of which mirror what happens during vagus nerve activation. Coincidence? Probably not. The ancient yogis didn't use words like neural networks or bioelectricity, but they experienced these things through breath, focus, and inner stillness. What we now call neuroplasticity, they called transformation of energy. Some researchers are even exploring Kundalini in relation to cerebrospinal fluid, the liquid that flows around your brain and spine. It's not just there for cushioning. It pulses, it carries nutrients, it may even carry information. Certain meditative practices appear to move this fluid intentionally, activating the pineal gland, also long associated with spiritual sight. Sound familiar? The serpent rising? The spine lighting up? Maybe it's not so symbolic after all. Maybe ancient descriptions of energy movement were their way of pointing to something very real, something modern science is only just starting to measure. But here's the thing, science still struggles with what it can't dissect. Kundalini won't fit into a clean lab report. You can't replicate it on demand. You can't standardize it. And that doesn't make it less real. It just means it lives outside the boundaries of our current tools, outside the comfort zone of reductionist thinking. And maybe that's the point. Because Kundalini doesn't just stretch your awareness, it stretches the paradigm. It challenges us to admit, maybe consciousness doesn't come from the brain. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the brain is just a receiver, and Kundalini is the signal that clears the static so you can finally tune in. And you don't have to choose between science and spirit. The future lies in integration, not clinging to dogma, not worshipping intellect, but embracing the mystery and the measurement, the biology and the soul. Kundalini lives in the space between, the place where breath becomes energy, where silence becomes insight, where the body becomes a bridge, not a prison, for higher awareness. You don't have to believe any of this blindly. Just pay attention. Start observing your body, your breath, your dreams, your reactions, because the more you listen, the more you'll notice. Something in you is already awake, and it's waiting for you to remember. From the moment you're old enough to sit in a classroom, you're taught how to follow. Raise your hand. Memorize facts. Don't question too much. Just absorb, repeat, and perform. And somewhere in that system, no one ever tells you the most important thing. There's an energy inside you that can change everything. You're taught what to think, not how to think. You're trained to function in a world that values obedience over awareness. But you're never shown how to tap into the raw power that's already woven into your body. A power that once activated makes you question, makes you feel, makes you wake up. Why? Because systems built on control don't benefit from individuals who are self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and spiritually sovereign. That kind of person can't be manipulated, can't be scared into submission, can't be told who they are because they know. Real awakening is a threat to those systems. So instead of encouraging inner discovery, they built schools and institutions that reward conformity. The structure itself is designed to train you to sit in rows, ask for permission, and chase external validation. The curriculum may change, but the design? It doesn't. It hasn't. Not for generations. And what's missing in almost every classroom? A single conversation about consciousness, about breath, about energy, emotion, intuition, or the subtle body, about what it means to be fully, fiercely human. The result? A culture that's deeply disconnected from itself. We learn to see the body as a machine, emotions as distractions, stillness as laziness, sensitivity as weakness. We're taught to trust systems more than our own inner voice. And Kundalini? It flips that whole paradigm. It reclaims the body as sacred. It honors emotion as wisdom. It elevates inner experience as valid, vital, and deeply powerful. And that kind of awareness? That kind of internal sovereignty? It's revolutionary. Because when someone begins to tap into their own energy, they become much harder to manipulate. They stop living on autopilot. They stop chasing empty validation. They start listening, not to the noise, but to the signal within. And when that happens, something shifts. They stop reacting. They start responding. They start creating. They stop seeking truth from others and start living it from within. That's the real power of Kundalini. It's not about fireworks. It's not about feeling special. It's about alignment, living in such deep connection with your inner self that everything false starts to fall away. And this is why Kundalini has been ridiculed, suppressed, and misrepresented in the West. Not because it's false, but because it's dangerous to the systems that rely on your disconnection. Think about it. Western academia separated the mind from the body. Religion externalized the divine, put it in the sky, on a pedestal, out of reach. Science, in its brilliance, dismissed the soul because it couldn't be measured. And what we're left with is a society that's intellectually rich, but spiritually starved. We can split atoms, land robots on Mars, but we can't sit with ourselves in silence for 10 minutes without reaching for a screen. We have more access to information than ever before, and less wisdom. We've turned healing into diagnosis, awakening into a trend. And when someone begins to experience real energetic shifts, the kind that don't fit into neat categories, what does the system do? It labels them, pathologizes them, prescribes pills, not because the doctors are malicious, but because the system they work in was never designed to support spiritual emergence. It doesn't have a framework for it. It doesn't know what to do with people who start feeling everything. But that's changing. Quietly, slowly. But it is. People are waking up. People like you, asking different questions, feeling something stir, a pulse in the spine, a heat in the gut, a dream that won't go away. They're realizing that the real curriculum was never in the textbooks. It was in the body, the breath, the silence. They're reclaiming practices that were once called primitive, remembering that indigenous cultures weren't ignorant, they were initiated. They lived in rhythm with the earth, in relationship with the unseen, in reverence for the energy that moves through all things. And now, that remembering is returning, not in temples, but in you. You were born with everything you need. The map is within. The intelligence is already active. The energy is already awake. The only question is, will you listen to it? Because when you do, really do, You step outside the cycle of dependence. You stop needing permission. You stop waiting for approval. You begin something that no system can teach and no institution can certify: self-initiation. You don't need a guru. You don't need a title. You need courage to feel, to unlearn, to trust the deepest, most natural part of you that's always known what's real. Because Kundalini isn't reserved for monks or saints or sages. It's for the single mom who meditates before her kids wake up. For the overworked student who senses there's more. For the artist who feels the pull. For the skeptic whose curiosity won't quit. It's for you, right now. Whether you recognize it or not. And the moment you do, the moment you really remember, the systems that tried to suppress you no longer stand a chance. Let's get one thing clear. Kundalini doesn't rise on command. You can't force it open by checking all the right boxes. You can't hustle your way into it. It doesn't care how many books you've read, how many mantras you've memorized, or how spiritual your lifestyle looks from the outside. This energy doesn't respond to ego. It responds to readiness, and readiness isn't about knowing more. It's about unlearning what's false. It's about clearing space, physically, emotionally, energetically, so that what's already alive inside you can finally emerge. That's the paradox. Kundalini isn't something you get. It's something you remove blocks from. And those blocks? They're everywhere. In your thoughts, your habits, your breath, your body. That's why preparation isn't optional. It's essential. Because when this energy moves, it doesn't just show up quietly. It moves through everything. Your nervous system, your emotions, your memories, your subconscious, your physical form. If something's stuck, the energy will find it. If something's false, the energy will challenge it. And that's not a flaw. That's the design. That's why the first step is never activation. The first step is purification, not in a religious or moralistic way, but in an energetic sense. Can your body hold the intensity? Can your mind remain steady when your identity starts unraveling? Can your heart stay open as your illusions collapse? This is why ancient traditions didn't just teach meditation. They taught discipline, not as punishment, but as devotion, a way of building strength, stillness, and spaciousness inside yourself. Fasting, breathwork, silence, movement, presence. These weren't rituals for the sake of appearances. They were practices to make you ready. Because in a world addicted to stimulation, stillness becomes sacred. And that stillness, it's not passive, it's powerful. It teaches you to listen to what's subtle, quiet, and real. It teaches you to feel, not just what's pleasant, but what's uncomfortable, unresolved, hidden. And it teaches you to witness, to watch your own mind and body with clarity instead of judgment. Because when Kundalini moves, the witness is everything. Without it, the intensity can overwhelm you. With it, you learn how to navigate, not from fear but from awareness. So start with your body, not by forcing it into a routine or a posture, but by listening. What does it need to feel safe? To feel grounded? To feel alive? Movement helps, but not performative movement. Movement that connects you to yourself. Yoga, walking, stretching, dancing. Not to burn calories, but to awaken awareness. Then tune into the breath. Your breath tells you everything about your state. Shallow breath equals scattered mind. Deep breath equals anchored presence. So breathe on purpose, not just during your morning practice, but throughout your day. Use the breath to come back, again and again. Because awareness doesn't start on the cushion. It starts now. In every small moment you choose to return to yourself. Emotionally, preparation means radical honesty. Can you tell the truth about how you really feel? Can you sit with pain without numbing it? Can you look at your own anger, shame, or grief and not run? Because here's the thing, this energy will bring everything up, not to punish you, to liberate you. But you can't be free of something you refuse to feel. If you're only chasing bliss, you're not seeking truth. The truth includes all of it: joy, rage, clarity, confusion, light, shadow. The more you can hold, the more you can heal. Mentally, the preparation is humility. You're not here to control Kundalini, you're here to surrender to it. And that doesn't mean being passive. It means being available. It means letting go of the need to analyze every shift, label every sensation, or explain every wave. You don't need to understand everything for it to be real. Sometimes, the energy knows things the mind can't grasp. Let the process teach you. Don't try to master it. Let it master you, until what was once discipline becomes second nature, and what felt like surrender becomes strength. And most importantly, drop the rush. Awakening is not a race. It's not about getting somewhere faster than everyone else. The energy already knows the way. Your job is to stop blocking it, to stop chasing the high and start building the foundation. Kundalini doesn't care about your goals, your vision board, or how many sound baths you've been to. It cares about your presence, your integrity, your willingness to feel it all. So if you're here, reading this, and something in you stirs, something deeper than curiosity, something that feels more like a quiet knowing, pay attention. That's not a signal to chase Kundalini. That's a signal that you might finally be still enough to meet it. The doorway is already there. The serpent waits, and all it asks is this: when it rises, don't flinch. When the fire comes, welcome it, not as a threat, but as your teacher, because discipline isn't restriction, it's devotion, not to a system, but to your own becoming, not to a guru, but to the sacredness of what you carry. You're not preparing for a moment, you're preparing for a life of clarity, truth, and alignment. When Kundalini rises, it doesn't just shift your inner landscape. It transforms how you see the entire world. Suddenly, things that used to grip you, the endless chase for validation, status, possessions, start to feel empty. Not because you don't care, but because you see through them. You've tuned into a deeper signal, and once you've felt it, the surface noise just doesn't hit the same. That's the part of awakening people don't talk about enough: integration. Because yes, there's fire, there's bliss, there's breakdown. But after all that, after the energy rushes in and your old self gets stripped down, you're left with one simple, quiet question. Now what? How do you live after the awakening? The truth is, you won't get a map. You won't get a certificate. No one's going to hand you a step-by-step guide to your new self. You just start living. But everything feels different. You walk slower, but with more purpose. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You begin to notice the light in places you used to overlook, the way sunlight spills through a window, the rhythm of your breath, the emotions behind someone's silence. Life stops being a blur. It becomes a mirror, reflecting everything back to you. And with that new clarity comes something deeper: responsibility. Because Kundalini doesn't make you superior. It doesn't give you a spiritual trophy. It gives you awareness. And awareness demands choice. Will you live in alignment with what you now know? Or will you betray it just to keep things comfortable? This isn't about being perfect. It's not about becoming some enlightened saint. It's about being real, about honoring your truth, moment by moment, even when it's hard, even when it goes against the current. The world will keep moving fast. People will still try to pull you back into old games, success, image, performance. But once this energy has touched you, something inside shifts permanently. You just know when something is false, You feel the weight of inauthenticity. You can't go back to pretending. But that doesn't mean you withdraw from life. It means you re-enter it, on your terms. You still have a job, relationships, bills, responsibilities. But underneath all of it, there's a stillness, a rootedness that wasn't there before. You're no longer living from the surface. You're living from the center. And that's freedom. Freedom isn't about escaping the world. It's about meeting it differently, seeing more, feeling more, responding instead of reacting. There will be days when it's overwhelming, when the volume of life feels too loud, because you're no longer just sensing the surface, you're feeling the undercurrents. But there will also be moments of peace so profound, so deep, it stops you in your tracks. Not because life is easier, but because you are clearer. The ego might try to hijack this. It'll want to make it about identity. I'm awakened, I'm different, I'm special. Don't let it. You're not here to rise above others. You're here to reconnect with them. To recognize the divine in every face, every moment, every heartbreak and miracle. That's the real gift of Kundalini. Not power over life, but union with it. You'll see people caught in the loops you once lived in, chasing things that don't fulfill, numbing pain they haven't named, and instead of judging them, you'll remember you were there too, and you'll meet them with compassion. Because awakening doesn't make you better, it just makes you more aware. And with that awareness comes a deeper kind of love, not the sentimental kind, not the performative kind, but the kind that sees clearly and loves anyway. So here you are, nearing the end of this journey, at least this chapter of it. But really, you're just at the beginning. You've walked through the fire, you've stood in the chaos, you've seen what's real. Now it's time to ask, how will you live? Because you don't need another book, you don't need another teacher, you need to listen to your own body, your own breath, your own stillness. Let everything you've remembered shape your mornings, your relationships, your creativity, your boundaries, your presence. Let it live in how you speak to yourself when no one's around. Let it guide how you show up when things get hard. Awakening doesn't end. It deepens, day by day, choice by choice, breath by breath. And if this journey stirred something in you, something you can't quite explain but can't ignore, that's not by accident. That's the energy, calling you back to yourself, back to what's always been there, quiet, coiled, and ready. So here we are, at the end of this video, and the beginning of something much bigger. Because this wasn't just information. This was remembrance. You didn't learn something new. You remembered something ancient, something that's been buried beneath distraction, distortion, and doubt. Something your soul has always known. Kundalini isn't some mystical fantasy from a forgotten past. It's not a marketing hook. It's not a fleeting feeling you chase in a workshop. It is you. It's the deepest, truest current running through your existence, and it's alive. It's the part of you that doesn't flinch in the face of truth. The part that doesn't shrink under shame. The part that refuses to stay asleep. This energy, this force, has waited patiently for you to notice it. Through every distraction, through every moment you silenced your intuition or betrayed your gut. Through every story you told yourself just to stay safe. And now, it's not just whispering, it's knocking. Not because it demands your attention, but because it knows you're ready. But ready for what? Not for perfection, not for performance, but for presence. Ready to stop chasing, stop performing, stop numbing, and finally come home to yourself. Because awakening Kundalini isn't about escaping life, it's about meeting it fully, with open eyes, with an open heart, with a nervous system strong enough to hold intensity without collapsing, with a mind humble enough to not need every answer, with a soul willing to stand naked in truth. The serpent doesn't rise to bless you with bliss and call it a day. It rises to burn away everything that isn't real, so that what is, what's always been, can take its rightful place at the center of your life. And that's the work. Not just the moment of awakening, but the integration, the embodiment. The real question isn't, will you awaken? The real question is, will you live from that awakening? Will you carry it into your words, your decisions, your relationships? Will you let it shape how you show up when no one is watching? Will you let it teach you that spirituality isn't a performance, it's honesty? Not every moment will be graceful. You'll fall back into old patterns. You'll doubt. You'll resist. That's normal. That's human. But something will be different now. Because once you've tasted what's real, the illusions don't stick the same. And if you've come this far, it means you're not here to spectate. You're here to remember, to participate in the transformation of your own life, not as a project, but as a sacred act. This journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about shedding everything you were told you had to be, so you can finally stand in the truth of what you already are. So where do you go from here? Start small. Get still. Breathe deep. Move gently. Listen honestly. Stop waiting for some perfect moment. You don't need a mountaintop or a mantra to start. All you need is yourself, unfiltered, unguarded, and willing. And if you want to go deeper into the truths we can't always say out loud on public platforms, join Insights Academy. It's a free newsletter where we share the deeper teachings, the hidden wisdom, the things that don't fit in neat algorithms. You'll also receive a digital copy of the Kybalion, a foundational text on universal principles. No fluff, no hype, just depth. That link is below. And finally, if this video spoke to you, don't just scroll past it. Let us know. Comment below. Share what stirred in you. Not for likes, but for connection. Because we're not building a community of followers, we're building a network of seekers, of humans who are ready to wake up, not in theory, but in practice. You're not alone in this. And no matter how long you've felt numb, lost, or disconnected, the energy hasn't given up on you. It's still there, waiting. And all it asks is this: don't fall back asleep. Because what's waking up in you is not just energy. It's truth. It's power. It's you.